3rd of December, 2185. Having just completed a mission on New Stockholm, I want to keep these journals going a little bit more. Again, this is for fellow Helldivers and for myself for the field. Hopefully we can keep this information going and share this amongst others. Keep documenting what we've been doing out in the field, how we've been learning, growing, and going against our enemies for managed democracy. I myself have been able to gather more stratagems and gear, recently completing a few more missions against the bots and dealing with some of the bugs a little bit more. I just completed my first mission against the Illuminate, those squids. I'll be stating that more a little bit into this journal. Originally, I had been using war bonds and getting some new supplies from that. One of the first things that I got was the SC-34 infiltrator armor. Against the bots, it did a very good job completing objectives, moving around quietly, and being able to stay hidden and checking radar a lot clearer. However, I do want to make a note to self and for other divers. It is not as useful during defense missions. I almost went to the wall for that one. Recently, against the squids here, I had purchased the armor for the CE-35 Trench Engineer, and I really enjoyed having those extra grenades, and being able to have that reduced recoil just allows me to feel like I can plant, point, and fire upon our enemies. Other stratagems and gear that I've been able to pick up was the grenade launcher, using some of my requisition slips to be able to get these stratagems. Sorry, still figuring out some of this stuff a little bit clearer. Believe me, I'm trying. But along with the grenade launcher, I found out that it's been able to be exceptionally useful for destroying bot fabricators and the bug holes. I would imagine it would do the same against the squids and some of their warp ships, but that's something to be tested down the road. As I said, I just returned from my first mission against the squids on New Stockholm. I found that some colonists had needed evacuated. So, gathering my gear and stratagems for the Gatling barrage, grenade launcher, and the machine gun and Gatling sentries, I landed down on the planet. It was a cold planet, and I'm glad that our armor at least has some heat to it to be able to help us out in the field to just survive. Landing on the planet, I called in my grenade launcher and was instantly taken by a mob. It was voteless. Startled me for a second, but with that launcher I was able to wipe out clumps of them easily. It's interesting. Voteless, those poor bastards. The citizens taken by the Illuminate and changed into these monsters. I understand why other divers say that death for them is better for them to be free of that than to not having that managed democracy. Because once you get taken, your vote no longer counts for that. And just seeing a swarm versus dealing with them one at a time is a vastly different game. But upon landing and getting my gear, I located the communications tower, calling down and uploading and linking the SSSD. That has to be done before getting the civilians evacuated. Calling that down and taking care of the enemies through that. I also had my first contact with the overseers. I've heard divers say that they can definitely be a threat, especially when you have a whole squad of them backed up with a voteless or more than one of them in a group. I suppose call this luck on my front because I only dealt with the one, and 2 grenade launches to them, wiped them right out and took care of them. But upon trying to complete that objective for that uplink, I've had to land and call down the Gatling sentry and the machine gun sentries. Those voteless can swarm, but thanks to those, they help wipe out a lot of those enemies super quick. I am learning a lot clearer too from not only my drops but also with fellow Helldivers. Certain sentries are going to be noted for the future. I know the rocket sentry has been stated to you have to keep enemies off of it or it will not fire within danger close like that. understandable. And I know that's something that down the road I'll be able to learn a lot more from and just keep testing myself. But once I was able to complete that uplink, I moved forward into the city to try and get to the citizens to get them evacuated and out from safety. I also had run-in during this time with the Watchers, one of the other enemies that the Illuminate have and deal with. And upon seeing them and dealing with what they can do, I do finally understand why Helldivers prioritize them. They say to shoot them down the moment you get clear line of sight and to make sure you have plenty of ammo for them. If you do not take them down, they will call in for reinforcement ships, and that is nothing but a huge pain in the ass to deal with. Finally, after some time into the city, I was able to locate the citizens and their safety area. Forgot to mention. Also, seeing the warp ship for the first time grounded, and enemies and voteless coming out of it. Another thing that helped me tremendously too is something a fellow Helldiver gave me a piece of advice on. If you get the Gatling barrage, throw it right on top of the ship, and you can just walk away. It'll take care of it very well. I also had found the SEAF SAM site. It was a beautiful surface-to-air missiles. I was able to get that site up and running, and I figured might as well help cover my ass while I'm out in the field, whether or not I see any of their drop ships or stuff come through. I do know that they have a lot of strength and they can easily take down the shuttles, but it's also from my understanding that their range is a little more limited than a lot of divers expect. But you know what, we work with what we got, and to be honest, especially when I get stuck out there solo, I'm willing to take care and take anything I get my hands on to help me out. Finally, I found where the citizens were located and bunked down. I was able to clear the area and help get them escorted to safety. You know, to be honest, having completed this now and thinking back, I'm not sure how they get off the planet or if they just stay bunkered. I've never been inside of one of those, but, you know, when you got your super destroyer and you're being out in the field like that, I guess it's just not a concern that we got to deal with. I have other priorities of getting to planets and helping out my fellow divers, helping out other citizens of Super Earth and everything. But upon starting to get the citizens out, I also had to keep dealing with voteless swarms trying to come in just to turn more of our citizens into voteless or to meat bags. But thankfully, a well-placed turret was able to drive them off. Something else too is just making sure that those turrets don't turn on our citizens. Thank democracy that that turret that I dropped did not start destroying our citizens. I've heard of divers saying that you start wiping them out, and especially too many of them, our super destroyers will turn on us because, let's be honest, we're taking out our own civilians and citizens there. We can't be having that on missions. But upon slowly clearing them out, doing small groups of citizens, I was able to finally get them all to safety and then continued moving out throughout the city. Just finding different resources from the rescue pods, different checkpoint areas across the city, gathering ammo, gathering super credits, gathering supplies, any samples I can get my hands on, anything to just help spread democracy and help me out upon taking out our enemies. Moving through the city, finding the different resources and everything, at least on this mission, I was thankful to not run into any bunkers. I think the other missions and times when I've been with other Helldivers, because sometimes those bunkers have some very valuable resources. Super credits are still going to come in handy for those new war bonds. And I believe as of this recording, there is a newest war bond that has dropped for us Helldivers. It'll be quite some time before I'm able to touch that one, to be able to get my hands on it and to use that in the field. I did see, for the first time out in the field, especially against the Illuminate, I saw my first lightning spire. I noticed it from a distance, but I remember very heavy words of wisdom from other divers. Stay low, stay away from them, and just destroy them from that distance. I made sure not to get too close, and one grenade shot from it, from my grenade launcher, was able to wipe it out with no problems. At least that was one less threat. I know that we have technology from our Tesla towers, but similar to those, they don't know friend from foe, and they will, well, they'll shock you to death. Now, I did note that the lightning spires don't seem to target the voteless or the other Lumina as much. I could be wrong, though. I guess at the time when I noticed it, I didn't see any the voteless or enemies around it, but finally clearing through the city, clearing out the last warship and getting to extraction, I was able to extract from the planet, and currently here making this journal for myself and for other divers. Now at the end of this, I wanted to discuss a little bit of my own personal experience so far and knowledge gained from out in the field and from other divers against all of our enemies. My own personal experience having fought each of the factions so far. Now, I will admit, having not seen some of the heavily armored Chargers or Bile Titans, or even the Illuminates Walkers, or Bot Walkers, some of the gunships in those, Hulks, I believe, out in the field for the bots. Keep in mind, this is only an initial thought of everything that I've dealt with so far, as still a new Helldiver helping out Super Earth and Managed Democracy. So far, the bugs feel, I guess, simple would be my way of stating it. Obviously, their numbers can be a detriment. Getting them to call out and opening up rupture wounds and bug holes and stuff is a pain. But thankfully, most of them are not range type of enemies that we have to deal with. So keeping that distance, keeping yourself safe in that front helps out. However, I do know that there are different strains that exist. The one that I was told specifically was that rupture strain that put a heavy tax on our divers. It sounds like that was a huge pain for a lot of divers in Oceania. There's a part of me that is just disappointed I wasn't able to be around and help during that front still. I would have done my part as best I could. Probably would have been on that planet as a stain, but you know what? Those divers took care of it, and I thank all of you for that. And I thank every diver that I run into for their knowledge, insight, and information. But in time, I know that I'll deal with those things. I know that I'll deal with those bugs and heavier and tougher enemies. But I also know in time, the stratagems, the war bonds, and everything that we unlock will help tremendously. The bots, for me, are the biggest pain in the ass so far. But it just doesn't discourage me. It wants me to just wipe them out, spread that democracy, and scrap them, leaving behind oil pits, an ocean of oil if needed, to show the bots what we're capable of, and that they will not stop us with our managed democracy and stop Super Earth. It'll be interesting in the future. I'm curious to see what else I can do against them. Thankfully, having learned that cover, concealment, and firing upon them can definitely help out to distract and prevent their aim from hitting us as much. But talking to some of my fellow divers, some of the gear they have is just, it's a pain to deal with. From the Hulks, some of the gunships, some of the war striders and stuff. To my fellow Helldivers, I look forward to being able to help you on those fronts a lot heavier one day. But forgive me, not of fear, not of a weakness, but of learning. I know divers don't exactly have the longest lifespans, but I'm hoping that I can at least do my part while I'm still here for it, before going to that wall of martyrs, before saying goodbye to fellow divers and not being able to drop anymore out in the field. In time. Squids, especially after this first mission dealing with them, definitely seem like they can be a giant pain to deal with. You've got the hordes of voteless that just want to swarm and claw and just gash away at our divers. Overseers just backing them up, and their shields being able to fire the projectiles they do. and even with some of their staff weaponry, it looks like, or I guess staff, whatever you want to call it. And then finally with Watchers just patrolling around trying to call in more ships and call in reinforcements, voteless, other overseers, flesh mobs, or whatever that tripod enemy is. I apologize, I'm drawing a blank on that one. But, and then hearing about the flesh mobs, they sound like a thing of horror. Just countless bodies of voteless and former citizens, almost medically meshed, sewn together into one, bioengineered, whatever you want to call it. I haven't seen one yet, but Lady Liberty help me the day that I have to. Lady Liberty help me the day that I have to deal with those abominations. May my aim be true, and may be able to wipe them out quickly. I plan to finish this journal entry off, as I did the beginning of the last one. To my divers, if you hear this, I apologize if it seems like I'm rambling or I'm mentioning the ministries, but believe me, I'm just wanting to make sure that I have my information down, as it seems important, that knowledge for that democracy. But the different Super Earth ministries: Ministry of Truth, the Office for Information Control and Surveillance; Ministry of Defense, Office for Defense; Ministry of Science, Office for Research and Development; Ministry of Humanity, Office for Administration and Civil Resources; Ministry of Expansion, Office for Colonial Management, Resource Extraction and Terraforming; Ministry of Prosperity, Office for Commerce, Economics and Logistics; Office for Domestic Security and Law; Ministry of Unity, Office for Domestic Security and Law Enforcement. Slipped up there. Ministry of Intelligence, Office for Intelligence Gathering. To my fellow Helldivers, I just want to end with this. We will drive our enemies back. We will be able to spread our managed democracy, and we will win these wars on all fronts that we deal with. And as we continue to grow and gather, let's just keep supporting each other. Too often I hear of Helldiver turning against Helldiver sometimes, especially in unwarranted ways. Or too often do I hear about defecting Helldivers or those working with the enemies and turning against Super Earth. No, let's support each other. Let's be each other's shoulder to shoulder, back to back war out in the field. For Super Earth, for managed democracy, and for my fellow Helldivers.